So a couple weeks ago, I went to this event at a place called Ceremony Coffee here in Baltimore that a friend of mine, Ashley Whelan, operates. And she was like, "Hey, come down. We're having this event from Kenya Coffees." It was right after the SCA Expo in Chicago. So after I came home, went down there, and this is one of the coffees. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. This is the Coffee Q&A, your daily weekday dose of coffee, questions, and hopefully answers. How y'all doing? Welcome to the show. Like I said, we this is a coffee that I picked up during the event for the Kenya coffee event. It was an event hosted by Vava, hosted by Ceremony Coffee, featuring Vava Coffee, which is a coffee exporter from Kenya, owned by a woman by the name of Vava Angwenyi, and she has one of her friends and I guess clients from the Bahamas, Nikita Shiel-Rolle, who owns a place called or operates an organization called Ocean Love Coffee. And their whole idea is they're trying to use coffee as a vehicle to raise awareness and funds to help improve the climate, especially down in the Bahamas where she's from. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. Braxton, good to see you, man. How are you? Keone, aloha to you as well. Mom, good morning. How's everything going? Yeah, actually, I was thinking about you today, Keone, because I saw in the news last night craziness in Thailand because of that whole Singapore 321 flight. If you're not too familiar, on the news, they had this a Singapore Airlines flight from London to Singapore was, heading there, and they're probably about I would say about, if they're outside, they're just outside of Bangkok. They're just crossing right before, probably an hour or so before Bangkok, and evidently this 777 had a major loss of altitude. Like it went from flight level 0, I mean, basically a level flight, to negative 2,000 feet per minute in just a moment. So I mean, we're talking like, I mean, the plane. If you've ever been in a plane with turbulence and had like lumps, it's rather disconcerting. And to drop at a rate of 2,000 feet per minute, that's horrific. And one person was killed. 30 people were injured and taken out to the hospital there in Bangkok. They diverted, of course. And man, it's crazy. Yeah, like it says, they had to land at Suvarnabhumi Airport. Craziness. And I mean, it's like you see these people talk about like turbulence, and you really should wear your seatbelt. Like I try to keep my seatbelt on. I'll admit I'm not always very good at it, especially like if I'm in economy and I happen to have gotten lucky and I have a whole row to myself, like 3 seats. A lot of times I will lie down and just not be buckled in. But I mean, for someone to be killed, I mean, they probably, I mean, if you're not buckled in, you're really flying out of a seat, coming down pretty hard. And if it's really rapid, you probably crashed into the ceiling. And I can only imagine the person that came down probably came down on a chair, on the top of a chair, like, man, terrible. Kenny says there's been quite a lot of storms in the area for the past couple of days. Oh man, yeah. That's terrible. That's terrible. Even in Honolulu too. I saw in the news they have a lot of heavy rains and flooding going on there too. That's crazy, crazy. So be careful out there. We don't want anyone to get hurt. Anyway, all right. So this is the Ocean Love Coffee, and so this coffee is a coffee that. Let's see. What does it say here? Unfortunately, it's pink, and I have a hard time reading it. We can contribute to the solution by providing Ocean Love Coffee, harness the power of coffee as a climate indicator, and the solution. Ocean Love Coffee leverages the power of the coffee industry to finance community-driven initiatives in the Caribbean and East Africa. The Ocean Love Social Impact features coffee as our social innovation, providing an avenue to finance initiatives that create a real and meaningful impact on communities and the front line of the climate crisis, which is very fancy writing to say that they're trying to do good. There's always like lots of fluffy discussion. But anyway, so this coffee, I believe, like you can see here, I haven't opened it, right? I have not opened this bag yet. It's still in its very pretty packaging. This is using traditional Kenyan or East African fabrics. that you would use in clothing and stuff like that. So very, very, very attractive. We're going to open it up and get into the coffee and see what it's about. A little rubber band here. Oh, nice. It's even got a little twist tie. If I can get it off. Oh, there we go. I like the packaging. I think it cost me $25. So we did a tasting of a bunch of coffee. I'll share some of the other Kenyans with you probably this week. And I bought this one. Oh, I thought there'd be a label. All right, no label. Just the little card here about Ocean Love Coffee. Nikita, if you ever see this, you should put a label on it. Otherwise, people will put this aside and forget what it is without the bag. Plus, it's always a good way to, have reminders of who you are and what the coffee is. All right, let's get into it. I believe this coffee was roasted in No, I think she roasted in the Bahamas, or I'm not really sure. I don't know. So fairly medium roasted coffee. Mom says, I enjoyed the show yesterday. Where can you purchase them treats from yesterday? Oh, you know what? Let me, you're talking about the brown rice sticks. I'm going to find out because Young is actually coming back here later today because there was a part from one of the brewers that are missing. He's like, oh, I'll come back on the way home. And I was like, oh. I said, you could just send it to me. And he's kind of an amazingly interesting guy because he's like, I don't know if I said this in yesterday's stream, but yeah, I called him and I was like, hey man, can you come and I want to buy one of your brewers. Can you send it to me? He's like, well, you're in Baltimore. I'll just come visit you. And I was like, what? You're going to come to Baltimore from Dallas? So he drives. Evidently, his clients really, he doesn't have clients in the Mid-Atlantic region, right? There's nobody here, even though there's a big Korean community here. He just goes to New York. So I think he has clients in New York. So there is somewhere close to you that you can get this. I will find out today when he comes by. His comments about the roaster seem real. Yeah. I mean, he's a little bit secret about it because I think he gets some kind of, is it vacuum roasting? Like he was saying, it's interesting. If I get down to Dallas this year, we'll go get to check it out and see more about it. Hopefully. All right, so here is the coffee. It's a little bit on the darker side, not darker, but definitely more medium, which kind of is appealing to me. Definitely has a little bit of a medium or roasty kind of ness, but we're going to go for it. All right, let's get our scale. Now I've brought a bunch of stuff to the shop. Now it's kind of split all my stuff here. And we need to measure. So we're going to go 24 grams. Gosh, it feels like I haven't made brewed coffee in a long time. See, what I like about this, so, we've been using that scale from Temu, that like $9 scale or whatever it costs. And it's got, it does have a finer resolution than this, but you know what? This Atom scale, I've used this for quite a long time, and it doesn't have that finer resolution. It's just 1 full gram, but gosh, this thing, it's just so responsive. It's so quick, so easy to use. It's so easy to use. And I don't know, do you really need a tenth of a gram resolution for this? I mean, I guess there's an argument for it, but really, I think sometimes when we geek out on things, we make it a little bit more complicated than it necessarily needs to be. Like, is that 0.4 grams going to make that much of a difference? Some people will say yes, of course. And I was reading an article. Not re- I was reading a thread today on one of the coffee forums where the guy was like talking about, is there a difference between V60 and origami or something like that? And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I totally taste the difference." And I was, and I get it. I'm sure there probably is, but it's I don't know if it has more to do with the brewer or the technique. I don't know. I, as much as I'm into coffee and doing it professionally, I tend not to get. I don't know. I tend to look. I feel like I look at it from a wider angle, right? Not getting too focused on the minutia, which kind of separates me from most of the people that I know in the business. All right, let's put this together. Oh yes, thanks, Keone. I'm glad you like the new space. Oh, here's something. I need to grab the grinder. Yeah, I'm glad you got to see the space. I thought I wanted him to come down so we could have a little bit of a meet at the new shop. And I thought that, let's do the live stream from there so you can see the progress. Actually, there really has been no progress. I mean, materially, there really hasn't been any progress because since I've been away for the last, almost for over the past month, I've been away for like 3 weeks. So there has been too much forward progress in that. But now, like I've been spending the last couple of days there in the space, really trying to, work out where everything's going to go. Where's all the equipment going to go? What equipment do we really need? And then, because I really spent a lot of the last month traveling, trying to really drill down to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And I think we're pretty much there. Oh, let me show you this. All right, there's the grinding. I don't know if that's terribly exciting visually, but it's better than just seeing some chubby guy talk on your screen the whole time. All right, let's look here. We've got our grinds fairly. Oh, we'll give it. There's so much. It's always about lighting. Lighting is always something. So we're taking our filter, folding it, right? As you can see, I fold it over on the seams just so that it sits flat, and I create the wedge for the wedge shape. This is the Bee House. This is the Bee House brewer, and actually the Bee House really has been one of my favorite brewers over the years. Like we worked with Bee House USA to get these, and you know what? One of the pleasures of the Bee House, beyond just the nice brew that it can do, is the people. Like the girl Amy that worked for Bee House USA, such a nice, pleasant person to talk to and connect with. And then it would be like, hey, Spro's always been a small shop, so we're not buying large quantities at any one time. And they're always happy to work with. They were always happy to work with us. Amy was always accommodating. So we were always selling these more than, well, we never sold the V60s because Hario USA, especially in the old days, was such a difficult company to work with. They're like, you have to buy a pallet. I'm like, buy a pallet? What am I going to do with a pallet of V60s? And then you want to buy something else? You buy a pallet of that too. What? I'm not a distributor. I'm a retailer. So we used some of their price because I would buy it in Japan, but we never really retailed many of them. Or I think I finagled a way to get some of them. But I was like, why am I finagling? I don't want to have to finagle. I just want to order and be easy. Everybody else was easy. AeroPress, Chemex, Ava Solo was easy. Bodum was relatively easy. But Hario, man. So I've always been kind of sour as a retailer to carry their products since that point. And people said that they changed over the years, but it's one of those things where it's like, you put a bad taste in someone's mouth and you're just like, I don't really want to even bother with you anymore. All right, so there we are. There it is. There's a little bit of, chaff going on in there. No big deal. No big deal. There's some nice fragrances. A little more caramel, chocolate, a little bit of roastiness, you know. If you're a light, bright person, you will probably not like this. Probably not. All right, let's get to brewing. We have our, just double check on the boiling. See if we're even using Hario Bono kettle, which is actually one of my favorite kettles. Like when it comes to like everyday useful kettles, I really do like the Harios. Like I like the way they're balanced. I like the handle, the grip. I like the way the spout is shaped. You know, it gives a nice little delivery. And the I wish it would focus in on. There we go. I wish it would. You know, it's got a good shape, a good angle, a good point, so that you can really control the flow pretty well. And I've been. This is. I mean, this is this one. You can see that it's a little bit on the dirty side, right? Like you can see some build up here. I mean, this is one that we've been using for well over 10 years. Like, you know, these ones, these are solid. And even the new one, the fit that sometimes I'll use that. These I all bought in Japan because turns out it's easier for me to fly to Japan and buy stuff than it is to actually work with Hario USA. All right, so now we've got our coffee. Our water ready to go. Coffee's ground. We'll pour the water in here. The water is boiling, but that's all right because you know what? It's going to be a little bit cooled down as we pour into here. Oh, what we need to do is I need to reset the scale. Let's get our bear timer back. We have our bear timer coming back to us, and we're going to begin. Okay, 30. So every time we reach equilibrium of 25 grams, 24 grams, it always starts to come out. I keep saying this, and I really do want to work on that cha te hato method. 75, there we go, 75 grams is where we're going to start. Let me twist this a little bit so you can see a little bit better. There we go, put that there. Oh, there's water. 36 seconds. So now we're going to continue on. I'm going to go for a relatively slow pour to 100 grams. There we go, about 100 grams there. Maybe it's better if I go this way. That way I don't cover the details. All right, so 1 minute, 100 grams. We're going to go a little bit. Now we're going to go, you know, we're going to try to do like maybe about 100 grams per minute. Again, I'm just pouring enough water to saturate the coffee, keep the coffee saturated so that it's always extracting flavor. So 130, 122. I tend not to worry too much about the pouring pattern. I just like to keep it all wet. If I was super obsessed, like some people are, I'd probably design some kind of shower head. So all I had to do was just pour it over there and it would just shower it. Like maybe like the Tricolette adapter. But as much as I may be thinking about it, it's like, oh, do I really want to take the time to make that? Probably not. Probably not. There are other things for me to do in the world than design gadgets for. All right, 225, 2 minutes, 20 seconds. So we got a nice flow. Everything seems to be going to plan, and I'm not talking too much. At least my talking is not interfering with my pouring as much as it has in the past. All right, we are 291 and 3. Oh, we're a little bit slow. We're a little bit slow. Let's go a little bit faster. Let's pour a little bit more. 312. So we're coming up on 350. Looks like our grind is pretty good for today. 345, 350, 350, 351. There we go. That's good. That's good. That works. So I'm curious to know, what do you guys think? Any topics that you're interested in exploring here on the Coffee Q&A as we move towards into the future? I'd be interested to know what you think. All right, looks like we're pretty much done. 3:50, 4 minutes, so just about right. So we'll take that off. Dump that out into the sink. Very nice, very nice. One thing I have to think about too with the new shop is towels. Just think about this, holding this towel. What kind of towels will we use? Traditionally, we've always used like basic white kitchen towels, terry cloth kitchen towels, which I like. But I wonder, is there a better, perhaps more elegant solution? Something to think about. All right, so here is our coffee from Ocean Love Coffee. Definitely, compared to other coffees we've seen on the show here, definitely on the darker side. There is a little bit of roasty aroma to it. The coffee itself, though, if we look at the coffee beans, sometimes when we see roasty, we smell roasty aromas or see a little bit more roasted coffee, it kind of makes you wonder, like, well, what is the coffee quality like? And the coffee quality does look, to my eye, just on tertiary glance, looks very clean. It's very clean. Looks like very nicely well sorted coffees. No broken-ins, no weird looking beans. It looks fairly nice overall. So I think we've got really nice quality coffee, just a little bit of a darker roast on it than a lot of people will be used to now. This is probably closer more to like an American type of roast, meaning that, this is closer to a roast profile that you'd find like at grocery store coffees that are very much more along with what the average American sensibility is towards what coffee is all about. Oh yeah, definitely the roast is coming through on that. Definitely, there's a definite roastiness to it. This might be a nice coffee to try with. I mean, there is some sweetness to it, but I was thinking this might be a nice coffee for those that enjoy certain types of cold brew, especially when you like cold brew with like cream and sugar. I think this would be an ideal candidate to do the cold brew process and then have it as a cream and sugar iced coffee later. So perhaps a little bit more roasty than I would prefer, but still a nice, pleasant drinking cup. Like there's no defects, there's no dirtiness to it, there's no off flavors. It's just clean, sweet, and a little bit roasty. All right. Well, there it is. Nice coffee. Actually, this would be a nice. This kind of profile to me is a good candidate for. If you're the type of person that likes to drink cream and sugar with your coffee, this would be perfectly great. Like this would be ideal. Like if I had this coffee served to me at my local diner, I would be I want to say aesthetic. No, I'd be totally like amazed. I'd be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like this is very nice quality, just a little bit darker roasted. if you're going to have darker roasted coffee, this is what you want. This really is. It's like, oh, clean, sweet. I wish I had donuts. That would be very nice with this. Kiona says that I know in wine terroir. Oh, I know in wine, terroir is identical to different places. Is that true with coffee? It would be interesting to know. So well, that's a good thing. We'll have to talk more about that. But in a nutshell, for now, yes and no. Yes and no in the fact that like years ago, when I first started the business, like in 2002, a lot of the, and especially through the 90s and before that, a lot of the countries you would have certain expectations of flavor from different countries. Like a Guatemala was this, a Colombia was that. And sometimes it was due to just how they developed. Other times it was due to um, the government. Like in the case of Colombia, the government was very involved in creating the Federación. They see what's actually called the Federación Nacional de Cafeteros, which is their coffee organization. And what their role is that any coffee exported out of Colombia must pass through an FNC inspection and approval, because the government of Colombia through the FNC, or the FNC through the government of Colombia, spent decades building the reputation of Colombian coffee as a clean, sweet kind of coffee. They created the Juan Valdez persona, and they spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to create everything about Colombia coffee. So when I started in the business, and people that I knew were trying to get more intro. Well, let me rewind a little bit. So we know washed and natural coffees, right? George, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Welcome as always. So we know basically there's washed and there's natural, and how those kind of developed was that when you make coffee, you need to clean it, right? Need to get the husk off, you need to get the mucilage off, and in the warm countries like Ethiopia and Yemen and places like that, it's so dry there. You would just that's how the natural thing, they just let the coffee sit out after harvest and just dry, and then they would remove everything from the bean. In Central America and other countries where there's a plentiful supply of water, that's why they would do the husky, they would hull it, drop the mucilage covered beans in water because they had a lot of it, and then that water fermentation, remove the mucilage, then dry it, and then make it. So these countries, for a long time, I think as it developed, the processing, natural or washed, kind of developed because of where they were in the world. And so a lot of Central America, South America is washed. Um, I think the Ethiopia and all that, and the Africa, drier climates, it's all natural because of that. So for a long time, those were kind of the separations between them. And then as the third wave of of coffee came about, and then it morphed into what is now more what's called collectively specialty coffee. And we started seeing, what we first started seeing was people who wanted to say, we have this coffee in El Salvador. How do we try it? Let's try it as a natural. So they would bring those techniques over. You've ever heard of the raised drying beds, the Kenyan drying beds, or African drying beds in Latin America, because somebody brought that technology over. So there's been a lot of cross. And so over the last 23 years, what was once, you could say, a Guatemala was like this, you can't really say that anymore, because now there's, especially in the specialty sector, because now there's so many different processing methods and techniques that are cultivation and everything that are now cross-pollinated from all over the world, and like new experimental processes, that there's really no longer necessarily a country designation or country identity for the flavor of that particular country's coffee, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. But we can definitely look more into that as we go. Actually, that's something that I know That's probably the extent of what I know on that subject. I'll have to ask one of my friends and see, like maybe we can get them to come on the show one day and be like, hey, let's talk about terroir and like how did each of these countries' coffees generally taste? Because by the time that I started in the business, that was just on the cusp of starting to change. So I didn't really come up in an industry where we were focused on what generally a country would taste like. Like you back then, there was some thought that like Papua New Guinea coffees, you might want to use some of that in your espresso, like in a small percentage, because there's a little bit of earthiness, maybe a light dirtiness to it. So if you want to bring some of that earthy tone out of your espresso blend, you want to pull that in, and then you bring like a Ethiopian Harar natural process to get some of that berry character, and then maybe a Brazilian Bourbon Fancy Santos, because that's just a general basy kind of coffee, right? Like the old school Brazil Fancy Santos was just like it's just got body. It doesn't have tremendous character, but it brings some of that body. You bring some of the like earthiness, and then you bring some of the berry, and then you might use what else would you use? Maybe like a Salvador to bring some of the chocolate notes, right? And you're kind of intertwining those in different variations, sometimes with varying roast profiles to like highlight or punctuate different things. Like if you wanted to like, you could probably take some of those, roast them together in like a normal like medium, but then maybe you'll take some of that blueberry or that berry note natural and maybe go at a lighter if you wanted to post roast blend, right? Then go for a little bit lighter roast to that to punch up some of that brightness and that like fruit, or you mix it all together and make it a melange and just go for it. So there's so many ways to approach it, and yeah, but there's definitely people that I know that will have to ask them, and hopefully they can come on in the future and like tell us with better authority than me, because I like I said, I was just at the very cusp of that when I started. All right, well, I guess that's pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for joining in. Hopefully you have a wonderful day out there. Back again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, with more coffee talk. Maybe we'll get back more into espresso. If there's ideas for espresso you'd like to know about or talk about, let me know. I still have the rig set up for the espresso from last week that I haven't taken down yet. So we have some more opportunity. All right. So until next time, hope you have a wonderful day, and see you again next time.